Hello, Math 130 students. We are going to pick up on page 1, section 8.1, the composition of functions. So here, the composition of function is just like when you plug in a variable. Remember, f of x, x is, any number that you decide to plug in. So here what we do is we're going to get comfortable, with what that means. And also now we're also going to be plugging in equations into other equations, okay, instead of just a value. So for example, we have f of x and we have g of x. So for part A, all we're looking for is the value of x when x is equal to 4 for my function f. So we know that we have our function f of x, and that was the 2x plus 2. But now what this is telling us, this is saying let your x value equal to 4 to plug that into your equation. So you're just like, okay, so we have my 2, the parentheses, plus 2. So the number that we're plugging in for x, that value is 4. So I end up getting 8 plus 2. So you get that f of, and remember what you plugged in was 4. So f of 4 is equal to 10. So that is going to be your final answer. F of 4 is equal to 10. This is saying, if you're reading it, this is saying that x is equal to 4, then your y value is equal to 10. So you have the ordered pair 4, 10 for your x and your y, okay? So that's what how it relates the x and the y. So we're going to take that same mentality and apply that to part B, which is here, you're going to look at your function g, and instead of a number like 4, you're just going to plug in the variable a. So you're just like, okay, so this is saying that we're going to let the x value equal to a. So we're just swapping the variables. So we have that g of x is equal to a 6x squared plus x. So now we know that we're going to plug a value in for x. And here our value, or the thing that we plug in for x, is going to be a. So now I have 6a, and let's change that color there. So now we have 6a squared plus a. So that is equal to g when a you plug in. So g of a is equal to 6a squared plus a. So this is like saying, hey, your x value, you switched it to an a, that's all you did. So now your y value is really just 6a squared plus a. That's it. So we're going to take that same kind of idea, but now we're going to do composition of function. Now we're going to plug in an entire function into the other function. So here, what this is saying, I have f composed with g. So this is really saying that I have my function f, and inside of it, I'm going to plug in my function g of x, okay? So you're like, okay, well, I know that I have my function f of x. Well, that f of x value was a 2x plus 2. So now that I have that as my f of x, well, I know that I'm going to plug in something. Oops, let's change that back to purple. So 2 parentheses plus 2. So what we're plugging in here, remember, this is saying let x equal the entire function g of x. G function. So you're plugging in the entire g function into the x of f of x. So now I wrote down f of x, so I'm plugging in for that variable. And here, the entire function is written here. So I'm going to have this as a 6x squared plus x. That's the entire g function. So then from here, I just need to distribute. So I'm going to have a 12x squared plus 2x plus 2. So now I have that f composed with my g function with respect to x is equal to 12x squared plus 2x plus 2. For part D, what they want us to do is they want us to use composition again. So it's like, okay, so I have my f of x value, and what I'm putting into there is going to be my g value when I have 3. I'm going to plug in 3. Well, you already know from part C, so from right above, I know that I have f composed with g with respect to x is equal to 12x squared plus 2x plus 2. So I already did the composition with f composed with g. So really what you're doing is you're going to just plug in that value, which is going to be 3. So I'm going to have f composed with g, and now the value that I'm going to be plugging in is 3. So I will have 12 squared plus 2 plus 2. And the value that I'm plugging in is 3. So now you just get your calculator. So you have 12 times 3 squared plus 2 times 3 plus 2. And that's equal to 116. So I know that f composed with g, when I plugged in 3, it gives me 116. Okay. Well, here's another example. So now I have my function f and I have my function g, and it's asking me to do the composition f composed with g with respect to x. So this is telling me that I have my function f of x, and what I'm plugging into my f of x value is going to be the entire g function. So you're just like, okay, well, I know that my f of x function, the function on the outside, that's going to equal to 3x minus 2. So now I'm going to put parentheses where I'm going to plug in my value for x, and here I'm going to plug in my entire g function. So this is my g function. So I'm going to plug in a 5x minus 5. Well, when I distribute, I'll get a 15x minus 15 minus 2. So if I have a negative 15 minus 2, that gives me a negative 17. So now f composed with g with respect to x is equal to 15x minus 17. For letter B, now it's asking us to do the reverse. Now it's asking us g composed with f. So here, order plays a really important role. So you have to make sure you know which variables are listed where. So this one, you're saying, okay, so I have my function g of x, and inside my g of x, what I'm going to be plugging in is going to be my f of x function. So you're going to look at top, remember our definition for f of x and g of x. So I have that my g of x function, well, that's equal to a 5x minus 5. So now I am going to plug in for my x value. What I'm plugging in for my x value is going to be the entire function f of x. So here's my f of x. So that's a 3x minus 2 that I'm plugging in because that's my f function. So now I'm going to distribute. So I'm going to have a 15x minus 10 minus 5. So a 15x and a negative 10 minus 5 is a negative 15. So I have that my g composed with f with respect to x is going to be 15x minus 15. So for the next part, it says that we have our two functions, f and g, and that not only do they want us to find the composition, but they want us to find the composition with the value. So it's like 1 is the value that we're going to plug in instead of for that generic variable x. So you're just like, okay, So I have kind of like my part A and my part B. So okay, so let's deal with the first part. So part A, it's asking us to find f composed with g with respect to 1. So this is really saying take your f value, and what you're going to plug in is your g value evaluated at 1. So there are a lot of different ways to do this. I feel like the easiest way is working from the inside to the outside. So let's think about this. Let's work on the inside. So I'm going to deal with g of 1. Well, if that's the case, let's take a look at my general function g. So my g function is a 3x plus 5. So g of 1 is going to be 3, and the value that we're plugging in is 1. Remember, this tells you let your x value equal to 1, find your y value for your function g. So now when I plug that in, I'm going to get 3 plus 5, which is equal to 8. So I know that g of 1 is equal to 8. So when it's saying, if I'm trying to find f of g of 1, let me change the color here. Or this is my g of 1. Well, you already found your g of 1 value. You found that to be 8. So now you have f, and what you're plugging in here is going to be a 8. So that is the value that you found. So you're going to look at your f of x function. Oops, let's write that over here. So f of x is equal to my 2x plus 4. And remember, this is saying let your x value equal to 8, find your y value. So now you're going to plug in 8 into this equation. So 2 times 8 plus 4 is going to give you 20. So now you can say that f composed with g with respect to 1 is equal to 20. And that is going to be your final answer. Now for part B is slightly different. For part B, it's telling you to find g composed with f with respect to 1. So this is saying you have your g function, and what you're going to plug in is that value of f when f is equal to 1. So you know that you have your f of x function. That was your 2x plus 4. So now when you are going to plug in for the x, you're going to plug in that 1. So now you have 2 plus 4, which is going to be 6. So you just found that, let me change the color here, that f of 1 is equal to, and we said 6. So now you're going to look at your g function. So g function is equal to your 3x plus 5. So now I'm going to plug in that 6, and you're going to get 3 times 6 plus 5, which is going to be your 23. So you have that g composed with f with respect to 1 is equal to 23. For the next example, here we still have a function f and g, and now we're doing composition with the value that's going to be negative, and that negative value is -2. So the part A, we're going to find f composed with g with respect to -2, and our part B, we are going to calculate g composed with f with respect to -2. So let's go ahead and split this up. So for part A, we are figuring out f composed with g with respect to -2. Part B, we are figuring out this is going to be g composed with f with respect to -2. So the only difference between these two, between A and B, is the order. Here it's f composed with g, and the next one is g composed with f. So those mean totally different things because of the order that it's written, okay? So here we are really trying to find f, oops. We are really trying to find our f function. And what we're going to be plugging in here is going to be our g function at 2. So this is saying let x equal to -2 inside my g of x function. So your g of x, that is equal to your 3x squared plus 4. And that value that you're plugging in is a -2. So now g of -2, and you can do this on your calculator, 3 times -2 squared plus 4 is equal to a positive 16. So I know that g of -2 is equal to 16. So when I have f composed of g of -2, that this is really saying f of, and since I already calculated that value, it was a 16, then I just plug a 16 into my f function. So my f of x function is that 2x plus 1. So for that value of x, I'm going to plug in my 16. So 2 times 16 plus 1 is going to give me 33. So now I know that f of my g of -2 is equal to 33. Or better yet, f composed with g, when I plug in a -2, is equal to a 33. And that becomes my final answer. So for part B, we're going about it in the kind of the reversed order. So g is composed with f in this one. So I know that I have my g function, and inside my g function, I'm going to plug in my f of -2. So this is saying let my x value equal to -2 inside my f of x function. So I know that my f function is equal to a 2x plus 1. So I'm going to plug in a -2. And when I plug in a -2, I'm going to get 2 times -2 plus 1, which is a -3. So now I know that f of -2 is equal to a -3. Remember, what you originally have is your g function, and inside of it you have your f of -2. But you already just found what your f of -2 is going to equal. You found that value to be a -3 from right above. So now your g of x function is equal to, that was your 3x squared plus 4. So that x value that you're plugging in is going to be a -3. So 3 times -3 squared plus 4 is equal to a 31. So g of f of -2 is equal to 31. Or better yet, you can say that g composed with f with respect to -2 is equal to a 31. And that becomes your final answer. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to email me, the Math Success Center, or the tutor. Thank you.